Now, on the big show, Maryland completes one of the greatest seasons in college lacrosse history with another national title, and we have complete coverage of the Terps' latest chip. Plus, who's in, who's out of the NCAA field of 64. Conversation and controversy on the way. Michael Huff gets you ready for Regional Weekend right now on the big show. Welcome inside this edition of The Big Show, and our thanks to everyone on this Memorial Day who has served our country. I'm Rick Pizzo. Michael Huff joins me very shortly to discuss the release of the NCAA baseball tournament. The field of 64 announced on Monday. 2 teams from the Big Ten included, 1 controversially left out. That discussion to come. But we begin with the chase for history by Maryland men's lacrosse, seeking not just the 2022 national title, but the chance to become the first ever 18-0 team in college lacrosse history, facing Cornell in the championship game. Of course, the perfect season was ruined by Virginia in last year's title game. No ruining of that perfection on this day. Tied at 1 in the first quarter. Anthony DeMaio, Logan Wisnauskas work the give-and-go game. DeMaio scores to give the Terps a 2-1 lead. More from the man they call Tony Time. Scores so many clutch goals. It's DeMaio again, the low angle. Terps lead it 3-1. Later in the first, man up for Maryland, and you got it. Anthony DeMaio, the first quarter hat trick. John Tillman and company on top 4-1 after the man-up advantage goal. Second quarter, Maryland looking to add to its lead, up 6-2. Kyle Long accelerates to the cage, finds Wisnauskas, who makes no mistake from there. Program's all-time points leader buries it to give the Maryland contingent something to cheer about. It's 7-2. Third quarter, same margin, more from Wisnauskas working around the pick, and that is ticketed for the top shelf. Terps up 8-2, but in the fourth quarter, back come the Big Red. Spencer Wertheim, 4 unanswered goals, and it is a 9-6 game. Now 9-7 after a 5th unanswered under 40 seconds to play. A huge face-off for Maryland, and has been the case all year long. Luke Weirman gains control, and the Terps are able to milk the clock. Time runs out on Cornell, and history is in the grasp of the Maryland Terrapins with the 9-7 win, staying perfect, winning the national title, and becoming the first team in college lacrosse history to finish 18-0. Logan McNaney was terrific once again. What a postseason the Maryland goaltender had. 17 saves in this one and a save percentage of nearly 71%. Remember, anything above 60% is elite for goaltenders at this level. An absolutely perfect performance for McNaney and the rest of this Terps team, which does, in fact, make history under head coach John Tillman, who took a few minutes to celebrate the victory and chat post-win with Emily Eman.
Coach, you knew this was going to be a battle from the beginning. 9 goals, 9 assists from your team. What does that say about the selflessness to get the job done?
Yeah, that's been the word for this group all year long. A lot of guys taking lesser roles, a lot of guys giving up what they want for the team, so only fitting that we play that way.
This team right here, you go back to 2017, the last time you won it. What did it take to get it back here to hoist that trophy?
It was a lot. You think back to this day a year ago, go in the locker room, you see a lot of sad faces, and it was a long bus ride home. You second guess a lot of things. Biggest thing is just seeing our kids upset, knowing how much they invested, and realizing for some guys like a Nick Grill and Jared Bernhardt, that was their last chance, and just feel like I needed to do a little bit more, and I didn't do a good enough job for them. But the only thing you could do is try to do it for these guys.
You mentioned the more that you needed to do. What was the number one thing that you did in the offseason to get your team here?
I think like any year you kind of look back and go, what did we do well, what didn't we do well, and try to kind of analyze those things. I don't think there's one thing. I knew if some of the guys that came back, like a Bubba Fairman and Anthony DeMaio, if they did come back, we had a really good chance to do something special. And it was going to be a great ride because they're just great people.
Coach, this team is going down in the history books. The first undefeated team since 2006, first 18-0 season. What do you want this team to be remembered for?
That they're great people. Obviously they won a lot of games, but it's not just about that. You know, our saying is be the best, and it's be the best person, student, player you can be in that order. So if they were just good players and they weren't making, you know, their parents or the school or the Big Ten proud, just wouldn't be worth doing. Luckily, this group is fantastic on and off the field, and they're great role models, and that makes it just work that much harder because they're such great people and they work so hard.
Coach, thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Congrats, Coach. Go celebrate.
National champions, and in fact, you can't argue with that from the Maryland Lacrosse Twitter account, We the Best. Now the argument begins, the best in 2022, or perhaps the best of all time. Certainly the first ever to go 18-0. The men's baseball tournament is just about to get started, and 2 Big Ten teams have been selected for inclusion into the field of 64, including regular season champ Maryland. Maryland is the 15 seed overall. That means they will host a regional this weekend in College Park. Also part of that regional, Long Island, UConn, and Wake Forest. The Sharks of Long Island are the 4 seed. That means they will open up against Maryland. The region actually gets started with UConn, Wake Forest, 1 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. And then the homestanding Terps take on LIU. Maryland is 24-2 at home so far this season. Well, the Big Ten's automatic bid went to the Michigan Wolverines. Had to have a huge weekend late in the regular season just to qualify for the Big Ten tournament, and then they run the table and get the auto spot. Michigan has been sent to the Louisville Regional. Louisville, as the number 12 overall seed, is the host. Oregon, Southeast Missouri State, also part of this region, and this region will also begin on Friday. The host against Southeast Missouri State, the first game of the regional weekend at 2 o'clock Eastern on Friday. Michigan and Oregon comes your way 7 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. And to break down these selections and the fact that Rutgers wasn't part of the field of 64, Michael Huff is here with conversation and some controversy. Let's start with the conversation and start with Maryland. I was a little bit surprised. I thought they would be seated somewhat higher than 15, but most importantly, they get the region to be played at home. How difficult is this region? How big of a favorite are the Terps?
Well, I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think they are the prohibitive favorite. I mean, I think we were all hoping to see them maybe in that top 8, and if they had won the Big Ten tournament, I think they could have been, which would have given you not only hosting a region, but possibly the super region. But to this point, I mean, you've got some challenges. Wake Forest is the one, I think, that jumps out at everybody. This is a solid ball club, 40-17. Got some really good players on it. But for Maryland, as you talked about their home field advantage, I think part of the problem for a number of teams in the Big Ten tournament was the fact that we had such late nights. When we lost that Wednesday due to rain, it just kind of threw a lot of kids' cycles off, and not to make excuses, but clearly Maryland and Maryland pitchers didn't pitch the way they have been all year. And I think getting home, knowing you're sleeping in your own beds, knowing you're going to have your own fans, majority there, I think we're going to see a different ball club.
And I'm sure Rob Vaughn and this team would have loved to have played on Sunday in Omaha at the Big Ten tournament, but that extra day of rest, it does mean, in fact, if you go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have Ramsey, you have Savakul, you have Dean all on their normal rest and all ready to go. And on that normal rest and during their normal routine during the regular season, they were basically
been pretty
unhittable, especially Ramsey and Savakul, Friday, Saturday starters late in the year. Now, Michigan will be an underdog as they head to Louisville. There's no question about that, because the Wolverines would not have been part of this field had they not won the Big Ten's automatic bid by taking the championship trophy. And yet you just have a feeling, Michael, when you watch this team right now, the pitching is better than it's been for most of the year. The hitting has always been there. And there are still those great vibes from the 2019 team that I think run through the blood of the Maize and Blue a little bit.
Well, you talk to some of the younger players, and they were probably committing to Michigan. And when they saw what happened in 19, they were all in. You've got a couple seniors that were a part of that. But like you said, they were the preseason number 2 by all the coaches. So when you stop and you think about all the Big Ten coaches thought we were arguably the second best, and to see their season go up and down, but finally come together. You said it right. They've got some great hitters, and they've proven that throughout the course of the year. Their pitching is one thing that's been very erratic, but somehow we have seen it start to come together. We think Bakich has done a great job, of just manipulating the pitching, inning or two here, keeping guys fresh, and I think that's the reason that they ran the table at the tournament.
And so Rutgers does not get in despite a program record more than 40 wins. Is this as simple as the committee saying, if you want to get in, we're going to look at that RPI and that strength of schedule. You have to play some tougher opponents in the non-con.
Yeah, exactly right. And unfortunately for them, their strength of schedule, 149, their RPI is nice at a 42. And the frustrating thing for me is the fact that these rosters and schedules for the non-conference are kind of set a year or two in advance. So as a coach, you sometimes know when you have a lot of things come together, some of the transfer portal, some of the freshmen that are coming in, and you know you're going to be good. But at that point, you have no choice. You have to play the schedule that's put in front of you. And that's where I think for all of us here, myself included, it's so frustrating to say, here's a club that did everything they could. You put a non-conference schedule in front of them, and they ran it. You got into the Big Ten regular season, they came in second place. You get them to the first time in the Big Ten tournament, they go 3-0 to get in the championship game. There's not much more you can ask these kids to say being perfect. When you're really close to perfect, you're 30 games over 500.
And how about not even the first or second team, according to the committee, left out? Designated as the third team left out of the field of 64. A little bit of a head-scratcher for both Michael and myself. The Terps have done it. National champions once again. First undefeated national champ in 16 years. First ever 18-0 national champ. Thanks to a Monday win over Cornell in the title game. The hero of that game, Anthony DeMaio. 4 goals, an assist, and this post-game chat with Emily Eamon.
You Tony time for a reason because of your clutch play, 5 playoff hat tricks. What is it about these big time moments that you elevate your game?
I think experience and the guys around me, our scout guys too, they give us a great look all week. And we have 5 other guys out there at all times on offense that can get the job done. And it's just whoever the ball's where it ends up, honestly. So whoever has to be that guy. And today early it had to be me. So other games it's going to be John, Kyle, Logan. Everyone does such a great job on the offense. Everyone's so unselfish.
1 year ago, your team stood here devastated after a heartbreaking loss by 1 goal. Now you've hoisted the trophy up. What do you feel in this moment?
I mean, words don't even express how I feel right now. Just the amount of hard work that everyone on this team that did, the difference that our defense was today on 2 days rest, it just shows how much they invested this year. Honestly, from last year's test to this year, both teams were very good. Our defense was just they were just that much more on point today.
Talking about that defense, your goalie Logan McNaney, what can you say about his play that impressed you most out there?
I mean, that unit does a great job. Logan was obviously seeing the ball great here this weekend, but I mean, it starts with Brett, all those D guys holding them to those good, shots that Logan could see, and they trust Logan, and that's how they do it down there.
Anthony, you're the only member of this team that also played for that 2017 national championship team. How would you describe this full circle moment that you'll take with you for the rest of your life?
I mean, it's crazy. Obviously, 17 was a little different. I was redshirting that year, but those guys kind of showed me the way in these big moments, how to act and how to handle myself. Guys like Colin Heacock, Matt Rambo, Tim Muller, those guys kind of set that standard that's be the best here at Maryland. And, I mean, today we are the best, but if it wasn't for those guys, we wouldn't be here. There's just so much experience and lessons that they taught me.
Anthony, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Go celebrate.
You and I were talking before the game about these ribbons and these pins. Talk about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously trying to bring awareness to mental health. And, as somebody who suffered from depression for most of his adult life, I think to myself, like, what would it have been like going through that as a student athlete? And I don't know if I could have done it. And so it's just the more we can talk about it, especially as guys, and bring awareness to it and make sure these young guys and just people out there know that there's people that love them, people want to help them. I think we have to do it. We have to do it more.
The close of May signifies not just the unofficial start of summer, but also the end of Mental Health Awareness Month. Of course, the issues facing those dealing with mental health concerns don't just fade away, nor should the conversations which address those concerns. With that in mind, we join Elise Menaker and a very special guest.
Here with us now, Abigail Eiler, clinical professor of social work at the University of Michigan. You're also a member of the Mental Health and Wellness Cabinet that the Big Ten established a little over a couple of years ago now. So first of all, Abigail, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here to talk about these important topics today.
Exactly. Very important topics. I'm glad that we get to talk about them. And let's actually start with provider surveys. I know that that was very important to you, not just to make sure that these things were out there for students, but also that it's working well. And so explain to me how these provider surveys are kind of providing you that information to make sure this is all going smoothly.
So our provider surveys we've done twice now. We do them on an annual basis, which means that we'll be doing another one in the upcoming months. And it gives us an opportunity to really look at the number of student athletes, the types of services that we're providing, average wait times at each institution and an average across our institutions, and then also student athlete patient to provider ratios. So we've got a multitude of different things that we're really looking at. And the research support that I have from Rachel Amity and our MSW students from the University of Michigan, I think has made this all possible, because it's a really tall task to kind of collect data from all of our member institutions and analyze it and really look at it and see what does this mean? But it's not just this like overview of what's available and who's available, but it helps us look at our strengths and areas for improvement in our models. So it's very student athlete centered, and we're ultimately trying to look at how we can improve our services and ultimately how we can help our student athletes, not just while they're at our institution, but even as they transition out of sport.
And there's educators, doctors, faculty on this cabinet when we talk about all the individuals. And then we talk about, too, all the students, not just the student athletes, as you touched on, as really these resources are for everyone, even faculty we mentioned. But when you focus on the students and all of them that they can help, you know, what did you notice just in the sheer number and maybe any difficulty that comes with trying to address all of them?
Yeah, the one thing I will say, when we collected all the information, we provided over 30,000 appointments across 12 of the 14 member institutions in the Big Ten. 30,000 appointments, that's a lot. And while it's across the spectrum of care, from those that are coming in for optimizing their performance to those that have more severe and persistent mental health, we are servicing everything in between, and we're doing our best to be able to do so.
And mental health can be a difficult conversation. I'm glad that now it's becoming a more common conversation. I'm sure we could all agree that it's just heading in the right direction. There's still a long way to go. But on that note, it's also, like we're saying, just important to talk about. And even just in the last couple of months, we've seen student athletes, 5 die by suicide. And so I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would start with saying it's devastating, right? As a conference, and the providers in our conference and our administrators and our coaches, we're all trying to come together, receive more education, and support one another as we navigate through this. I think the one thing I can say with confidence is every single one of us is dedicated to achieving zero suicide within our conference and beyond. That's going to take education, that's going to take more time and attention, and sometimes at some institutions, even more providers available. You know, as someone that's been doing suicide-specific research for the last almost 2 decades at this point, I would strongly encourage folks that are having thoughts of suicide, that in those moments where they're experiencing fear, they're scared, they're in isolation, and they're depressed, to reach out. Because the one thing I will say that through our discussions on this cabinet is each member on our cabinet will listen, because each person has value and they deserve to have a life, and a long life at that.
And I think a good way to wrap up, especially on this note, and something that you were just touching on, is so often, especially around student athletes and athletes in general, there's this idea of being strong and being tough, and how sometimes that can mean not opening up and talking about these things. So what would be your message to anyone, and also student athletes, as there are these resources and that they can reach out to help? What would you like to say to them?
I mean, I think the one thing that's really important that I would want to convey to folks is that we are human and we are wired to have different emotions. And sometimes we can navigate those independently, but ultimately we're also wired to be dependent and, you know, engaged with one another. So reach out. Ultimately, we're here for you, and we'll do our best to support you when we can. And I will say, as a 24/7 provider, there's a reason why we make those commitments and dedications, and we will continue to do so as we move forward.
And more than anything, it's just wonderful to see the community and the conversations that are happening around mental health, and that includes today. Abigail, thank you so much for your time and insight today.
Thank you.
Oh, Maryland hosting as the number 15 overall seed in the NCAA baseball tourney, and that's big news because the Terps just 2 losses at home all year long. See you at the Bob Smith Stadium, set to host a regional. Maryland plays 7 o'clock Eastern on Friday night. Rick Pizzo back with Michael Huff to discuss both Maryland and Michigan, the 2 Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament. All comes down to the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. Rob Vaughn, Eric Backus should tell you that. So for the Terps, who are the key players this weekend?
Well, it's almost too easy when you look at their pitchers to say, oh, we're going to go with Ryan Ramsey or Jason Savacool. Really, I think Nick Dean. It's going to be so important that he pitches the way he did early in the year. He was their Friday starter, and so he's got to get back to that confidence and pitching the way he did. And then position player-wise, again, you can say Chris Alina, obviously player of the year, but in my mind's eye, it's got to be Nick LaRusso. Here's your third baseman who's hit 3rd or 4th most of the year and was 2 for 16 in the tournament. He's got to find that magic, get that spark going, because you've got guys above him and below him that are swinging the bats just fine. So, Nick, let's find that magic again. Relax, breathe. You're at home. But if those 2 guys kind of a little under the radar, if they can play well, I think this bodes very well for Maryland.
Yeah, more than 60 RBI this year for the transfer from Villanova. You need guys like that to step up in the postseason. Same question for Michigan. Key guys.
Well, key guys, I mean, I'm going to start with Riley Bertram, the shortstop, partly because he was on that team in 2019. And again, it's kind of easy to say Clark Elliott or Joe Stewart, but I think Bertram, if he can quietly step up, lead by example, play that great defense. And then on the mound, we saw Jacob Denner. Oh my gosh, what an incredible performance he did in the Big Ten tournament, but he had a 6.75 going in. He's got the 3rd most starts. And so I'm thinking this lefty, who is probably going to be your 3rd starter, maybe 2nd starter, if he can pitch the way he did in the Big Ten tournament, I think that's going to go a long way for Michigan, who, again, took 1 out of 3 against Louisville, and I think they have a really good chance to win.
Michigan opening up in Louisville against Oregon Friday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. Same date, same time, different location in College Park at home for Maryland as the Terps open up against Long Island. So now you're set for regional baseball weekend. For Michael Huff, I'm Rick Pizzo. Thanks for hanging out with us on this edition of The Big Show.